March 14, 1939. West 135th Street, Harlem. A Thursday afternoon when the sun sat low enough to cast long shadows across the pavement. Bumpy Johnson stepped out of Red's Louisiana kitchen with two associates flanking him. Across the street, a black sedan idled with its engine running. Inside sat Vincent "Vinnie Shots" Coll, a contract killer sent by the Genovese family. Everyone who understood the rules expected Bumpy to die that day. The Italians controlled the docks, the unions, and the political machinery. Harlem's numbers racket generated millions annually, and the commission had decided it was time to collect. Bumpy Johnson was the obstacle. Vinnie Shots had killed 11 men in his career, each assignment completed within 48 hours of acceptance. This was supposed to be number 12. It wasn't. The conflict didn't begin that Thursday. It began 3 years earlier when lucky Luciano recognized that Harlem's underground economy operated beyond Cosa Nostra's reach. The numbers game, an illegal lottery system, thrived in every tenement and barbershop north of 110th Street. Street runners collected bets. Controllers managed the runners. Bankers held the money. The weekly revenue exceeded what most Italian operations generated in a month. The structure was efficient because it was community-based. Trust replaced enforcement. Reputation replaced territory. This made it nearly impossible for outsiders to penetrate. Luciano understood this. Dutch Schultz had not. Schultz attempted a hostile takeover in 1935, flooding Harlem with muscle and demanding tribute from every numbers banker operating above Central Park. He believed overwhelming force would collapse resistance. Instead, it unified it. Bumpy Johnson had worked under Stephanie St. Clair, the woman who controlled much of Harlem's numbers infrastructure before him. When Schultz's men started breaking fingers and firebombing establishments, St. Clair turned to Bumpy. He was 30 years old, already serving as her chief enforcer. His reputation was built on precision, not volume. Schultz sent 20 men into Harlem at once. Bumpy killed 3 in 2 weeks, each death appearing unconnected to the others. The police investigated none of them seriously. Schultz pulled back, then was murdered by the commission in October 1935 for unrelated reasons involving his plan to assassinate a federal prosecutor. The vacuum left behind became the prize. Luciano waited. He understood that Harlem required a different strategy. Direct invasion had failed. Partnership might succeed. But partnership required negotiation, and negotiation required leverage. By 1939, the commission believed it had sufficient leverage. They controlled the political apparatus through Tammany Hall connections that reached into every municipal office. They controlled law enforcement through systematic bribery that had been refined over 2 decades. They controlled legal commerce through union dominance in the garment district, construction, and waterfront operations. Harlem was isolated geographically and economically. The calculation was simple: eliminate Bumpy Johnson, and the numbers bankers would negotiate surrender within a week. This was logical. This was how power transferred in every other borough across the city. Harlem was not every other borough. Vinnie Shots waited until Bumpy reached the sidewalk. The distance was 40 feet. An easy shot for a professional. He opened the passenger door, steadied his right arm against the frame, and raised a .38 revolver. The street wasn't crowded, but it wasn't empty. Late afternoon foot traffic moved along both sides of West 135th. A vegetable cart stood near the corner. Children played stickball 2 blocks down. Normal Harlem activity for a Thursday. The first bullet went high, shattering the window of Red's Louisiana kitchen. Glass exploded inward. The second struck the brick wall 6 inches from Bumpy's head. Brick dust scattered. 2 shots from 40 feet, both misses. This was not Vinnie's standard work. Bumpy didn't run. He stepped backward into the doorway, his hand moving to his waistband, his eyes fixed on the sedan. His associates scattered immediately, one diving behind a parked car, the other sprinting toward Lenox Avenue. The smart move was retreat, back inside, through the kitchen, out the rear exit into the network of alleys that made Harlem nearly impossible to navigate for outsiders. Bumpy didn't retreat. He drew his weapon, a .45 automatic, and walked forward. Vinnie fired again. The third shot hit the pavement near Bumpy's feet. Sparks jumped where the bullet struck concrete. Bumpy continued walking. His stride was even. His weapon remained at his side, not yet raised. The street was not empty. 24 witnesses watched from windows, doorways, and parked cars. A woman pulled her child inside a building entrance. A man behind a newsstand ducked low but kept watching. In any other neighborhood, witnesses disappeared before police arrived. In Harlem, witnesses remembered everything. This mattered. Bumpy closed the distance to 30 feet, then 20. Vinnie fired his fourth shot. This one came closer, passing near enough that Bumpy's coat moved. Bumpy did not flinch. He did not accelerate. He did not seek cover. He raised his .45 and fired once. The sound was different from Vinnie's revolver, deeper, heavier. The bullet struck the sedan's hood, punching through metal. Vinnie ducked below the dashboard. The driver accelerated, tires screaming against asphalt. The sedan pulled away, turning south on Lenox Avenue. Bumpy stood in the middle of West 135th Street, weapon still raised, watching the vehicle disappear. Smoke drifted from his barrel. Then he holstered his gun, straightened his coat, and walked back into Red's Louisiana kitchen. He ordered coffee, sat at his usual table, lit a cigarette. Most people misunderstand this moment. They believe the failed assassination was luck or incompetence. It was neither. Vinnie Shots was adequate at his profession, not exceptional, but adequate enough to complete 11 previous contracts. The misses weren't accidental. They were psychological. The commission wanted Bumpy frightened, not necessarily dead on the first attempt. A public shooting, even unsuccessful, sent a message. You can be reached anywhere. The expected response was negotiation. The expected response was fear. Bumpy's walk forward rewrote the script entirely. Word reached Lucky Luciano within 3 hours through channels that connected every borough to every operation. The report was simple. Bumpy Johnson did not run. This was the detail that mattered. Fear is a contagion in underground economies. When a boss shows fear, his organization fractures. Soldiers question leadership. Partners reconsider alliances. The entire structure depends on perceived strength. Territory can be lost and reclaimed. Money can be lost and earned. Reputation, once damaged, rarely recovers. Bumpy's response demonstrated something more dangerous than fearlessness. It demonstrated certainty. A man who walks toward gunfire believes he controls the outcome. That belief, when witnessed publicly, becomes fact in the minds of everyone watching. Luciano called a meeting that same evening. Present were Vito Genovese, Frank Costello, and Meyer Lansky. The topic was Harlem and what to do about Bumpy Johnson. Costello argued for escalation. Send 10 men instead of 1. Flood the streets with soldiers. Make it impossible for Bumpy to move freely. This was the standard playbook that had worked in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Lower Manhattan. Costello had used it personally to consolidate territory in 1936. He saw no reason it wouldn't work now. Lansky disagreed. He understood that Harlem operated on different mechanics than other territories. Overwhelming force would trigger community resistance. Every shopkeeper, every numbers runner, every resident would become an obstacle. The police could be bought, but not in sufficient numbers to occupy an entire neighborhood indefinitely. The cost would be enormous. The return was uncertain. Genovese supported Costello. He believed the commission's reputation required a visible response. Backing down after a failed hit suggested weakness. Weakness invited challenges from other territories. If word spread that a single black operator in Harlem had forced the commission to retreat, every ambitious crew leader from New Jersey to Connecticut would start testing boundaries. This was about more than money. This was about control. Luciano listened to all arguments, then made his decision. No further action. This shocked the room. Genovese demanded explanation. Costello called it surrender. Lansky remained silent, understanding already. Luciano's reasoning was practical, not emotional. The numbers racket generated revenue, but it also generated risk. Federal authorities were increasing pressure on organized crime. J. Edgar Hoover was building cases. High-profile violence attracted attention. Harlem's operation was profitable precisely because it stayed beneath federal scrutiny. A war would change that. Newspapers would cover it. Federal agents would investigate. The entire structure could collapse. More importantly, Luciano recognized something Genovese missed. Bumpy Johnson had just demonstrated that controlling Harlem required killing him personally, in close proximity with certainty. No contract killer would accept that assignment after Vinnie's public failure. Sending soldiers meant committing made men, not contractors. Made men killed meant retaliation was mandatory under commission rules. Retaliation meant war. War meant federal attention. The mathematics didn't work. That pause mattered. The commission's decision not to escalate was interpreted throughout the underworld as Bumpy's victory. He didn't need to kill anyone. He simply needed to refuse to be killed. The power dynamic shifted. Within 2 weeks, 3 Italian-controlled operations in Harlem quietly withdrew. No announcements. No negotiations. They simply stopped operating. The space they vacated was filled immediately by Bumpy's network. Numbers banks that had been paying tribute to Genovese's people stopped paying. Runners who had been pressured to split earnings kept their full take. The system returned to its pre-1939 structure as if the commission had never attempted entry. The aftermath unfolded slowly. Vinnie Shots left New York permanently, relocating to Philadelphia where his reputation as a reliable contractor no longer existed. He completed 2 more assignments over the next 5 years, both smaller jobs that paid less than half his previous rate, then disappeared from criminal records entirely. The Genovese family made no further attempts on Bumpy Johnson's life. This wasn't mercy. It was calculation. The cost of killing Bumpy exceeded the benefit of controlling his territory. Every soldier sent into Harlem was an asset exposed. Every day spent planning was a day not spent on more profitable ventures. The commission chose profit over pride. Bumpy's reputation expanded beyond Harlem. Brooklyn's black organized crime networks, previously fragmented and operating without coordination, began consolidating under similar principles: community integration, selective violence, political awareness. The Italian Commission still controlled most of New York's underworld, but the model of total dominance was permanently altered. There were boundaries now that hadn't existed before. Bumpy continued operating until his death in 1968. He was arrested multiple times, served 2 prison sentences totaling nearly 12 years, and maintained control of Harlem's numbers operation for nearly 3 decades despite repeated federal and local attempts to dismantle it. The confrontation on West 135th Street became legend, retold in barbershops and bars, but its significance was structural, not mythological. It proved that power without community consent was unsustainable. The Italian families learned this lesson at significant cost. They controlled politicians, police, and unions, but they could not control a neighborhood that refused cooperation. Force worked when the target was isolated. Bumpy was integrated. His safety depended on community support. That support depended on his legitimacy within Harlem's social structure. Vinnie Shots fired 4 bullets at a man standing on a public street. Not one witness called the police. That detail alone explained why the commission strategy was doomed. Bumpy understood this from the beginning. He didn't need more guns than the commission. He didn't need more money or political connections. He needed more legitimacy in the only territory that mattered to his operation. His response to the assassination attempt wasn't bravery. It was messaging. Every witness who watched him walk toward gunfire carried that story to every corner of Harlem. Every retelling reinforced the same narrative. Bumpy Johnson could not be intimidated. Intimidation was the commission's primary tool. Without it, their expansion into Harlem became impossible. The meeting where Luciano decided against escalation wasn't about respecting Bumpy. It was about recognizing an unwinnable conflict. Wars require resources. Harlem would have consumed soldiers, money, and political capital with no guarantee of success. The smarter move was containment. Let Bumpy control his territory, maintain boundaries, avoid unnecessary conflict. This became the unofficial policy for the next 2 decades. The numbers racket continued generating millions annually. Bumpy took his share. The commission took theirs from other operations throughout the city. The equilibrium held. Violence still occurred, but it remained localized and controlled. Federal investigations focused elsewhere. The system worked because both sides recognized its limits. That Thursday in March 1939 established those limits clearly. Not through negotiation or treaty, but through one man's refusal to behave as expected. The mob backed off because continuing forward offered no strategic advantage. Bumpy Johnson didn't defeat the Italian Commission through superior force. He defeated them through certainty. When your opponent believes you cannot be broken, they stop trying to break you. When they believe killing you requires more resources than you're worth, they stop trying to kill you. The outcome was decided the moment Bumpy stepped off that sidewalk and walked toward gunfire. Everything after was inevitable. Power is often misunderstood. It's not about who has the most weapons or the largest organization. It's about who controls the narrative when the weapons are drawn. Bumpy Johnson controlled that narrative for 30 years. The story of March 14, 1939 reminds us that sometimes the most devastating response to violence is simply refusing to be afraid of it. That refusal, witnessed publicly, becomes its own form of invincibility.